Hi guys, welcome to another stream of Meteorology Lab, and this is going to be a little bit of a short webcast since I'm in the middle of writing that book there, but we will kind of cover what's going on. I don't have any time-lapse from today, so we'll take a look at the satellite here, and you can see there's a storm system there in the northern Rockies and central Canada, and more importantly, the background temperatures are a little bit cooler. And let me see if I can bring that satellite image up. Let's see, there we go there. Let me switch the enhancement scheme here, and I'll pick a different color here. Let's see, I got a few different ones to pick from. Trying to figure out which one's going to be better. I guess we can give that one a try. Well, anyway, you can see if you look behind the clouds here in the northern plains or the northern Rockies, you can see temperatures are a bit on the cool side, like right there. There's some light blue there, and that's indicating some very cold temperatures there at the surface beneath the cloud layers, and a lot of these clouds are being produced by convective instability. And ahead of that, we've got some thunderstorms there in the central plains. We've had a tornado in the Hill City area, so that's going to be right around here, and that's tracked east-northeastward, and there's the cell. So we have had supercells today, and normally during the fall, we start to see more of that supercell activity in the central plains, not quite as much as what we have in the spring, but nevertheless, we do have severe weather potential picking up. Here's a look at the surface chart, and we can see the southerly flow over Texas, and temperatures are a bit on the cool side there in Texas, but the dew points are noticeably low. So we've got 55-degree dew point in Dallas, and 60s elsewhere, and just no 70s anywhere except right on the Gulf Coast. So we do have kind of like a recirculated tropical flow coming from the south. The Gulf is marginally open, mostly just up the Rio Grande Valley. And up to the north, we do pick up a front up there. There's north winds there at South Dakota and Nebraska. So we're going to put that front somewhere like that. And looks like we do have a bit of a dry line. That probably extends about like that. And where we've seen that supercell develop was in the vicinity of that triple point. Or maybe just a little bit along the dry line. So, yeah, there's the cell tracking off to the northeast. And it can, if you keep that in mind as far as, you know, staying on the northwest side of that wedge of tropical air, that'll give you usually some of your best possibilities for supercells. To the north, we see northerly flow here. So we've got much different pattern. Normally what we have is kind of a vague area of convergence around Utah, Arizona. So we don't have that. We've got northerly flow and kind of cool conditions up there. And let's see if we can put the potential temperature map up. And we see a much different pattern that we're usually accustomed to. Normally potential temperatures are showing kind of like a big ridge across this area here. The Rocky Mountains, ironically, get some very strong heating, except that the elevation is so high that when you reduce it to sea level, only then do you see the high temperatures there. But look at that. We've got an east-west gradient across Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. So a definite front between the Four Corners and Idaho. Definite front from south to north through Colorado into Wyoming. So we're going to place that front on the southern area of that boundary, kind of like that. And then we have some problems in California, of course. We've got the marine layer kind of corrupting the analysis results a little bit. So I'm looking up and down, trying to find where the front might be, and it's very hard to tell. I think we may be looking at maybe something like this with that northwesterly flow. If you go back to the METAR observations, there's probably been a bit of a wind shift there. Maybe pressure's coming up there. I think that's Palm Springs. So that's some of the stations you would check. Let's see here. Yeah, that's going to be Palm Springs there. So, yeah, going through METAR trend histories, that'll give you some background, and let me see if I can do that real quick. Usually aviationweather.gov is the best place to go for the METAR trends. So we head to that page and we go to METAR. Then down at the bottom right, you just put in KPSP. Looks like their interface has changed a little bit, or I'm in the wrong box. Okay, yeah, this one here. PSP. All right. So we're going to pick up the past 36 hours. Okay, so there's the trend history at Palm Springs going from older data up to newer data, and we see a little bit of northwesterly winds yesterday, and then calm conditions overnight, then northwesterly winds again. And we also look at the pressure. So we've come down from about 2970, 2975, very strong decline during the day, down to 2957. So maybe we do have a frontal boundary in the area. The pressures are not coming up, so I would, just continue looking at other stations and see if we can narrow down where that front is. But I think it is going to be somewhere in that area right there. Okay, let's look at some of the other charts. I think a good one to look at is going to be the let's see, we'll look at the potential temperature analysis there from Albany, and it's showing very similar to what we saw in digital atmosphere. There's that front right there, and it's a little bit more questionable what's happening in California. So we can turn to the thickness chart, and that's going to be, let's see, right there. All right, so there we go. Definitely pick out that frontal boundary where we analyzed it there earlier, and yeah, it looks like we would end up carrying that, possibly just continued west. You can see along the coast here the stronger thickness gradient along the northern California coast into Oregon. So yeah, I think we're going to put that between LA and San Francisco. So going back to that surface map, I don't know, we would look at some other stations in the San Joaquin Valley and maybe put it something like that there. Okay, elsewhere, of course, looks like we've got that frontal boundary right through Nebraska and on through the St. Louis area. And there goes that high-pressure area that's been dominating the weather over the past several days in the central and eastern U.S., and the remains of Maria way off to the sea there. Cold air coming in western Canada. There it is right there, filtering in through the Fort Nelson area down to Prince George, I think. And we'll take a quick look at that with the mesoscale charts. Okay, so currently, there's the current conditions. You can see northwesterly flow across Oregon. So this is post-frontal air. Temperatures at 19Z, lots of sub-freezing temperatures on the mountain peaks there in the Rockies, so we know that this is a pretty cold air mass. And then overnight tonight, wow, look at all the sub-freezing temperatures pretty much throughout all of the mountainous areas here in Montana and Idaho. And then in Boise, 33 there, and 51 in Seattle. And then tomorrow, there's where we heat things up, and it looks like, wow, even tomorrow, yeah, man, this is like afternoon conditions, sub-freezing in Montana in the lower elevations. This is Great Falls there. This is Browning, and Butte is in there. So they're all below freezing with this next cold air mass coming south. So this looks to be a pretty cold punch, pretty cold reinforcement, contrasting with the Pacific air that we have out in this region. And of course, that'll continue spreading southward. And wow, temperatures really come down in the mountains there. In the southwestern U.S., we start out like this. This is where we're at right now. There's basically where the front is, and I guess that's running through the area north of Las Vegas. It's a little bit indeterminate. We do have 15-knot northwest winds down the San Joaquin Valley. That tells me that maybe the front has come through there. Temperatures have come down about 10 degrees. But just it's very hard to tell along the coast where to put that front. Okay, then on the plains, there's the current conditions there in Kansas, Colorado. There's the first bit of polar air coming down. This is the older Canadian air mass, and what we do is we put probably a warm front like that, and then the cold front comes down like this. And then what we have here, this is probably an occlusion extending up into the South Dakota area. Let me take a look at the chat. I just want to make sure that our audio is running okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of on a roll here with the charts, so I just want to keep going here. The southern plains, pretty warm today, but temperatures cool down pretty quickly overnight because of the dry air. Looks like we only come down to lower 70s in northeast Texas, though, but a few 60s up north. And then for tomorrow, the front just doesn't make any progress. In fact, it turns around into maybe a quasi-stationary front or a warm front. See that flow? The mean flow across the front goes south to north. So that's definitely not a cold front there. We're going to see that lift northward. There it goes tomorrow night. So it's going to stay kind of warm in Texas, unfortunately, over the next few days. The southeast U.S. under the influence of that old polar high, driving northeasterly flow into Florida and Alabama. And there's probably a little bit maybe of a frontal. I would imagine there's probably a bit of a frontal boundary with the northeast flow here and the deep tropical flow to the south. So yeah, we do have kind of a convergence zone going through the Fort Lauderdale area to Fort Myers, and then some other boundary out in the Gulf of Mexico right there. So it looks like we've got a little, maybe a kind of weak area of baroclinicity right there. And then overnight, we see that little wave move to the east, and I think that's the remains of that little tropical depression we had earlier. So that moves eastward overnight. This is the morning map, and very cool conditions in the Atlanta area and Huntsville. 60 at Atlanta and 59 at Huntsville. And then for tomorrow, I'm looking at that easterly wave because it's approaching Texas. I'm going to watch for that for the possibility of maybe triggering a few showers possibly there in southeast Texas. And then northeasterly flow spreading across Florida there. And then for the northeast U.S., Under the influence of that cool polar high there, 40s and 50s. And then for tomorrow, let's see, where's tomorrow? Yeah, there's tomorrow afternoon, 50s and 60s for highs. Still under the influence of a 1030, looks like a 1036 millibar high over Newfoundland and the St. Lawrence Seaway. And that's continuing to push a northeasterly flow through New England there. The NHC map looks inactive for a change. And let's check out the 5-day. Looks pretty quiet, so that's definitely good news after the active season that we've had so far this season. 250 millibar chart up at 34,000 feet, looking like this. And we know that there's a cold polar air mass all the way up and down the Rockies in this region, and it's definitely showing on the upper air charts there, and around that air mass is where we find the jet. So polar front jet from California out to Colorado. And that is going to be about 110 knots there, 120 knots. Emerging out on to the plains. And no wonder we have some long-lived storms there in Kansas and Nebraska. And then at the surface, much like what we saw, the Canadians focusing on this northerly boundary, but I think, I kind of gravitate towards the southerly boundary, not what they've drawn here, because you can see the warmer air here, 25 Celsius, 22 Celsius, and then we go down to 18, 20, 15. The front is defined, of course, by temperature contrasts, not necessarily by continuity or dew point or wind shift, so I'm definitely going to put that boundary kind of to the south there. So it's going to run something like that. There's that old high-pressure area, and that's going to move towards Newfoundland and Labrador like we've shown earlier. Oh yeah, and there is that cold air coming down the backside. Fresh outbreak of cold air, so we're going to watch that for tomorrow. Okay, so we've kind of put the weather picture together there. Let's see, we got Carl Berghoff and Electric Dog and Ron Chalfant. Let me let you all know that I am behind on emails, and I'm probably going to try to work on some of that after the webcast. I've been pretty busy with that book project. So I've probably got to sort through that a little bit before we get into Monday here. Sue M made it to the 10 p.m. Eastern webcast. Kind of thinking about maybe moving it back to 8 o'clock. I don't know, I'm not really a big fan of 8 o'clock, but I think we had more viewers when we were doing it an hour earlier, so I'm going to give that some consideration there. Fun with Tech and Mark Davis is here, and Ryan Toomey's, like Ron liking the intro music. We've got David Moore and Ron here. Ryan finishing up the work week in southern Florida, cooler temperatures with some eastern coastal showers rolling in. Mike Estwick mentioning the sharply cooler temperatures there in Colorado, and we will see that warm air advection coming through over the next day. Storms blasting through central Florida with heavy rains from Ryan. Big water spout earlier near Merritt Island, Titusville, and rain tapering off in southern Florida. We've got Justin Pulliam here in Veo Joe 65 in Illinois. And yeah, it is October here. So in about another month, though, we've got Halloween coming up, and it's only going to be about 7 weeks before we've got Thanksgiving approaching. Justin says GFS showing an interesting system around the 13th. So yeah, we'll take a look at that. Mike Estwick says plenty of snow, 9,000 foot elevations there. I think, I forgot where Mike is. And Ryan expecting a brutal winter there. Okay, so let's head into the GFS and just wrap up the forecast. And yeah, we can take a look at the European model. I've got that all lined up there, so here's that system there in Saskatchewan, and behind that, strong cold air vection coming around the backside of that. So that will bring some cold air south into the northern plains and kind of reinforce that old boundary that we've got in Colorado there. And there comes that cold air, 1032 millibar high over Alberta. There's our outgoing system there in the eastern U.S., and the cold air just dissipates. It doesn't really make it very far south into the Great Plains. So by Friday, we've still got a boundary through Kansas into New Mexico. And quite a change here from Saturday to Sunday, but I'm still not seeing much of that cold air coming south into Texas. Maybe a little bit of it swinging around with this westerly gradient here on Sunday. And then European model showing on Monday. Okay, that's a very strong punch of cold air there. 1033 millibar high. So that could be the first cold blast of the season coming down for the 10th. And there it goes all the way down into Texas. So if that pans out, we'll see temperatures probably in the 60s and 70s for highs in Texas. Okay, with the GFS, let's look at that there. There's the current conditions. And here's that strong cold blast coming through Montana there. A lot of snow there around Browning and Cardston, Great Falls. And around where we have the influence of the warm air coming around, looks like some thunderstorm activity there in Saskatchewan. So by tomorrow, we're going to see that kind of spreading south. By the time we do the webcast, a little bit of a snowstorm there in Montana. And then we've got our southerly system in Colorado, so things a little bit active there, a little bit of baroclinicity, and snow in the higher elevations of Colorado there. And then the boundary extends all the way to California like that. Large migratory high exiting the area there. And then for Tuesday night, when we do the webcast, things will look like this. Some of the cold air will be spreading into the Great Plains. Very little advancement of that cold air through the western U.S. Texas still under southerly flow, but I think we're going to get that easterly wave moving in, and maybe behind it, some of the deeper tropical air. And with that, we might have rain chances increasing a little bit. Then for Wednesday's webcast, GFS bringing that front south a little bit and going for a little bit of thunderstorm chances there in Oklahoma. Thursday night, not too much different. And then for Friday, we develop a baroclinic system there in Colorado, and that moves up into Minnesota like that. And you can see that the little frontal boundary that we had in the Great Basin area, that kind of relaxes a little bit. Not quite as strong there, but we've got a system there in the Gulf around the 7th. And then for Saturday, there's our system there in the Gulf, otherwise pretty quiet. A couple systems moving through the northern U.S., so that's kind of the pattern right there. For Sunday, a week from now. We've got plenty of thermal gradient up in the northern plains, but nothing really picking up the boundary except for this very strong system. This is an occlusion up in Manitoba there. And we just got this stationary front there in the Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon area. For Monday, this is where we have a little bit of a cold air outbreak. So this is in line with the European model. And that's showing a very strong push southward. And you can see there a backdoor front into Albuquerque coming through the mountain passes there. So that's that gradient there, that's a pretty good sign of a very potent cold air mass spreading southward. And then going into, let's see, Tuesday, cold air spreads down. There's a little bit of a system right there in the Gulf out ahead of the frontal boundary. And Wednesday, we're just seeing the rest of the cold air pushing southward. Another little wave developing along the front on Saturday. And that becomes active, maybe a chance of thunderstorms there in the southern plain or southern Gulf area, the central Gulf Coast area around the 15th. So we're kind of getting into a little bit of a storm season down there in the Gulf area too. And there it goes up into the Carolinas. Some cold air coming back in behind. So I guess we're going to finally cool down, maybe about a week. We just have to get through this last bit of warm weather over the next 5 or 6 days here. Okay. So that's about all I got for the webcast there. Trish and Lou, snow around the 12th, possible in Wisconsin. CK Sin 01 also joining us there. And Carl Berghoff discussing the snow potential there. Climate prediction center was pointing to above normal temperatures yesterday. Okay. All right, well, time for me to get back to book writing and catching up on emails. So hope you all have a good rest of the evening, and we will see you tomorrow. And that does it for me. Take care.